are. As a company, technology, innovation, those are our keystones, primarily for our U.S. government. We're about half of our business is with the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines. The other half of our business is with international organizations as well as other organizations in our U.S. government. You can see we're 72,000 employees strong, 25 billion company, and we are headquartered in Waltham, Massachusetts. Although, if we really look at the company, we are all over the United States. We have 6 businesses, and you'll be pleased to know that 2 of those businesses are actually headquartered here in the Metroplex. And a third business, Space and Airborne Systems, that's actually headquartered in California, has a large percentage of their business here in the Metroplex. And not only are we doing traditional engineering, we're also having large manufacturing done here in the McKinney and around the 635-75 corridor. We have some manufacturing there also. But you can see our headquarters is in Boston. We have a very large presence in Washington, D.C., as you can imagine, given that's a customer base for us. And you might hear, oftentimes Raytheon is only thought about as a missiles company. We do have our missiles business in Tucson, Arizona, but that's really only a part of the business. So Raytheon itself, while we have 6 businesses in the corporation, we really have 4 core technologies or 4 core market areas that we all support. And as we go forward in providing solutions to our customers, what we're finding is that we more and more have to collaborate across the various businesses. Probably 20 years ago, you would say that each one did their own thing. Now, our systems are becoming much more complex, and the capabilities that our customers need actually require all of the capabilities across the company. So let me just take you through what those core markets are. One is sensing. So if you can imagine any kind of information that you want to gather, whether it's a radar on an airplane, a radar at DFW, you see them spinning out there, space, imaging, all kinds of sensors, air, land, sea, space, and now as we work into cyber, there are sensing capabilities in that area too. And all of our businesses do something in this area. A second is effects, and clearly you see the picture of the missile there. The ultimate effect that Raytheon provides is a missile, right? Find the target, and the effect is that a missile goes in. However, when we start thinking about cyber, an effect can be detecting that something is happening and then doing something about it so that you're not affected by whatever was going to attack you. Same kind of premise as a missile, only you don't see it, right? You don't see it. So this is a key area for us also. Command and control. Broad capabilities in commanding and controlling all kinds of different systems. In my business, we control a lot of space assets. So satellites, and you know if you watch TV, there are lots of satellites doing lots of different things, from weather, gathering weather data, to gathering other kinds of intelligence data. You might not know it, but the air traffic control system in the United States is a Raytheon system. Air defense systems, Patriot systems, all have command and control. And so this is a key area where we bring together a lot of the assets of the company. Okay? So it is really a fundamental solution that we bring to our customers. And then mission support. Clearly, if we're providing products, then you need to support them, and this is a key area for the company. Not only just giving you a product and training you on it, making sure that you know how to use it, but also maintaining it, not just in your facility, but also in the field. We have a very large presence in theater today where we're maintaining products that our warfighters are using on a daily basis, as well as various operational centers around the United States. We work with and partner with our companies. So our 6 businesses actually support all of these areas, and we all bring different capabilities. and asked me to tell you specifically about intelligence and information systems. We are headquartered in Garland. You might have driven by our facilities, and you might not have even known that you drove by our facilities. They're not, they don't necessarily stand out. But, so this is the part of the business that is providing systems that basically take in data from all kinds of different sensors. We're actually providing analysis of that data, and then providing decision aids to our customers. That's kind of the basis. Now, what we do, which you might not know, large environmental support. So, #1 provider of weather data in the United States. So everything you see on the news that is from satellite images is actually being processed through Raytheon systems. And our various systems broadly in the United States government, interesting little fact, we're processing every day 3 times the amount of data that's in the Library of Congress. All kinds of things. And as we talk about cyber as we go forward, we can think about the web, we can think about what's happening in all of our electronic medium, as well as those things that we talked about, images, radars, and things like that. So large amount of processing, as well as, because of the kinds of systems that we have provided, that has allowed us to actually step into cyber products and providing products that help keep those systems safe. And we can talk more about insider threats and all of those kinds of things that are happening to our systems today, and what we can all do to help manage that, because that's what we have to do. We have to manage that. So that's quickly what we do in Raytheon. And I'll give it back to Paul.
Our second panelist, Dr. David Hunn. David, please. Dave is the Chief Scientist at Lockheed Martin Missiles and Fire Control. He's in charge of the technical excellence, development, maturation of critical technologies, and the growth and transfer of that critical technical knowledge across the entire Lockheed Martin Corporation. He's also responsible for the improved technical staff. One interesting note is we're going to certainly get into this topic that Dave is very active in STEM education, particularly here in Texas, and has actually started his own school, his first graduating class, and many notable achievements of getting into some of our top universities. So quite a contribution to our local STEM efforts. So, thank you, David.
And thank you for your time. I know time is very valuable, and I appreciate you devoting time this morning to come by and have some breakfast and listen to this panel discussion. We are a technology company, much like Raytheon, but what really fuels the company is relationships and networking. And that's one reason events like this are so important to all of our companies. And the relationships and networks tend to be convoluted. I know Raytheon and Lockheed are vigorous competitors in some areas. We're also very close team members in some areas, and we're also joint venture partners in some areas. So it's interesting to see how the business evolves and how we go about executing what we do. Lockheed is divided into 4 major areas, and the aeronautics on the far left, based in Fort Worth, has probably been in the news most recently. F-35 Joint Strike Fighter, F-16, of course, C-130. Skunk Works is located in the aeronautics sector. I'm in the missiles and fire control area, which is based in Grand Prairie and Orlando, Florida. And we also, on the far right, have our space systems company that makes launches and satellites based out of Denver and Sunnyvale, California. And then our information systems and global solutions company based out of various areas, primarily Washington, D.C. and Maryland. We have plus or minus, probably reading the paper, plus or minus X% of 132,000 employees. A big percentage of those are professional scientists, engineers, IT professionals. We have about 1,000 different facilities in many different cities, states, and countries around the world. You know, I don't know how you brand it, but this is, I think, a good chart as any. We like to do what hasn't been done before. We like to find value in the gray market, the gray space between technologies, to find new solutions to hard problems for our customers and our allies. Total sales in 2010 was close to $46 billion, and when I talk numbers like this, especially to the college kids, I say, okay, take 46 billion divided by 365, and today, if I don't bring in $125 million, we're not going to make our sales. In fact, tomorrow, if I don't bring in another $125 million, I'm not, and Thanksgiving. So anyway, it's a big beast to feed, and that's although it's something you always have to worry about it as you continue to grow the company and get shareholder value. As you can see, most of our, over half of our sales is defense, but a big portion is with homeland security, IT operations, and international sales. So we're branding ourselves really as a global security company. We're best known, our bread and butter, for missiles and aircraft and products for the warfighters, but we're also doing quite a bit in international growth. We're doing quite a bit in the energy markets, especially in alternate energy. We're branching into the nuclear industry because a lot of the information assurance, a lot of the networks that we do can be applied to the nuclear industry as it's being revived these days. So we have a whole arc of solutions for national security. I was asked to list the top 2 business challenges, and I have the in red, ignoring the obvious, such as how do you continue to grow a company in a pseudo-constrained and kind of shrinking market? How do you return shareholder value? How do you execute these complex programs that oftentimes are judged in the newspapers? How do you make sure that what you make is affordable, and especially in the military systems, much like Raytheon, our things have to work all the time. If you pull out your cell phone, amazing devices here, your iPhones are incredible devices, but if this doesn't work at minus 46 degrees centigrade, or if this doesn't work at 140 degrees Fahrenheit, we can't use it, and these won't work at those conditions. So, we've got to have products that work all the time, every time, because the results are disastrous if they don't. That's one of the challenges in development products that both Raytheon and Lockheed developed. But if I were to look at top 2 business challenges, I've got the perfect storm illustrated on the right. How do we attract and retain world-class talent? Many of our programs, many of our businesses can only hire U.S. citizens. And if you look at the graduating classes in science and technology, primarily with U.S. citizens, man, it can be pretty slim pickings. And I think I've seen some statistics that say that if our need, in fact, if you combine Raytheon's and Lockheed's needs for U.S. citizen professional graduate students, we could consume everyone that's being graduated in the U.S. every year and still not meet our needs. So trying to flatten the business, to pull in all of the international talent is a challenge. And then the last business challenge, I think, and probably more appropriate to what we're talking about today, is how do we ensure information assurance? When is a cyber attack considered an act of war? How do you protect the incredible capabilities that are enabled by all the digital technologies that both of our companies are using? It's the sophistication in cyber attack capability is growing tremendously. It's a distributed attack. You can have individuals sitting anywhere, smart kids oftentimes, that continually test your system. So I think these 2 top business challenges ought to mesh in nicely to the subject we're talking about today. Again, thank you for your time.
All right, well, over the course of the rest of the morning, what we want to do is get into a good dialogue and discussion, covering, actually, there's 2 key challenges that David mentioned. Cybersecurity, STEM education and the pipeline talent. And we're also going to try to, if we have time, get into some discussion about our domestic as well as international defense budgets and the implications of that, and also the implications of the international defense and security markets. And want to get everybody involved in this, but to kind of prime the pump, we'll ask the panelists a couple of questions and then see where we go, trying to get everybody involved in questions and discussion. So the first question I'd like to ask is recently the Department of Defense has essentially declared war on hackers, stating that the U.S. Department of Defense has just put forth a 10-year strategy that is going to move their position from trying to defend against cyber attacks and enhance cybersecurity to be more deterrent attacks, essentially declaring war and also declaring that cyber is a domain. So the U.S. Department of Defense has put cyber on the same level as land, sea, and air. And there'll be far more budget, and again, its position on the next thing is to be far more preventive and actually retaliatory, making comments and quotes like, bullets and missiles are going to be the response for cyber attacks. So a very serious shift in policy and strategy. And I'd like to know what the implications of that strategy the Department of Defense is for companies like Raytheon and Lockheed.
Well, I'll start. As I talked about, Raytheon Intelligence and Information Systems is about actually providing data, and that data has to be protected. And what has just been really recognized and stated publicly is a shift from exploiting data in our systems, just like you put McAfee or Norton on your system, on your computer at home so that nobody can get in, to steal data. That's what we have traditionally worried about. Now we're shifting to understand that there can be malicious intent to actually destroy things. So it is actually a shift in a recognition that if you are attacked, you could destroy a network, you could destroy a nuclear power plant, you could bring down a financial system, the rail system, our air traffic control system. And so that has provided opportunities where we now as a company need to think more broadly about the solutions that we bring to the table. No longer are we building fences, that's what I think about it, building fences around systems. We now have to think about what might actually be a deterrent to someone attacking the system. So it's creating a lot of opportunities, and in fact, Raytheon Company itself, within my business, is developing products that not only protect at the edge, but also live within cyber environments and are identifying behaviors that might be impactful or damaging to the system. You've heard about Trojan horses and malicious software and worms and all of those things that we're worried about. Some of those kinds of software attacks can live in a system for a long time before they actually cause damage. So you need to be on the alert from a cyber perspective. But Raytheon actually uses those tools day by day in our own network. So we use them, we use it to protect our own environment. So broadly though, it's offering us the opportunity to extend cybersecurity to areas of the government that haven't been thinking about them because they have traditionally been segregated systems, private systems. But as a desire to share data, after 9/11, right, we talked about we need to share data across agencies. Well, anytime you share data, anytime you have a network, anytime you have people in the loop also, that creates an opportunity for malicious intent. So opportunities abound in this new world, given the shift and the recognition that cyber attacks are potentially extremely damaging on a lot of fronts.
Yeah, I think maybe to put the problem in a little different perspective, that we we've all probably been subject to some sort of cyber attack. If you've gotten a call from your credit card company and said, were you up in Ontario spending money at the pharmacy up there? And say, well, no, actually, I'm down here in Texas. So your credit cards get shut off, and it's a nuisance. Your credit card is covered with $50 insurance or whatever it is, and so it's no big deal. But when it was no big deal, just this defensive approach that Lynn was describing worked fine. Put fences in, and you segregated the networks. Everything's wonderful. But now you can have some smart hacker in Chile bring down the U.S. energy grid. If that were to happen, would that be considered an act of war because of the national impact of it? And if it is considered an act of war, what do you do then? It's not Chile's fault. It's some very clever programmer or hacker down there that's doing it. So you have a threat that's widely distributed that might not be associated with a national sponsor that can pose dramatic damage. I use the energy grid as an example, but it could easily bring down Wall Street for one day, and the financial impact of that would just be terrible. So in developing, it's like any act of malicious intent, like Lynn was talking about. Many companies are looking at offensive techniques, and also how can we track through breadcrumbs where the attack's coming from. So all that makes this problem very complex and very, very difficult as we try to control this genie that's sort of out of the bottle already.
And when you think about it, if you think about traditional warfare, costly kinds of products that we would defend against, the cost of entry for someone to try to attack your system is virtually nothing, right? They could go to the cyber cafe and have the tools to attack the system. So it is a different paradigm, much like in Iraq and Afghanistan when we started seeing the improvised explosive devices. They were very low tech, right? All of the products and solutions that we have tended to bring to the table in the war theater are more expensive. And here was a very low tech, and we had trouble defending against that. This is a very similar kind of environment where the cost of entry is very, very low, but the cost to defend is potentially very, very high.
And it also has implications on even hiring and personnel policies. My dad always told me, if you want to protect the bank, you hire a bank robber. Similarly, you look at going to these hacker conferences and hire these very brilliant, oftentimes not college graduated kids that are fantastic, and you say, hey, come work for Lockheed or Raytheon, and they said, what do you mean I got to work 9 to 5? What do you mean I can't work from my house? So it's really shaping. If you look at the talent that you want to pull in to develop some of these new technologies, it's shaping. You can't be the white shirt, blue tie IBM anymore because you're not going to get the talent that you need that's out there.
I have to tell you a story. Just yesterday we briefed our CEO, Bill Mortensen, on a potential solution that we were providing in this area. And we have a small group of folks, just exactly the folks you were talking about. And we said the briefing went very well. Customer was very interested and could see how that solution could solve the problem. And he said, well, what did they wear? Because he's met these folks before. And
what color were their hair?
Well, and our president said, Bill, you would be proud to know that they actually wore shoes. So it is definitely a different perspective in dealing with the cyber world.
Well, that leads us to another great area. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Brent.
That begs the question, if we're going to find these people to attack and go on the offense, how are you going to find that barefoot guy? I mean, he's going to be the real problem. Do we really have the capability or ultimately to find them and attack them and really attack us?
The capability is being built right now. It's a very difficult problem because the nature of the distributed personality, say the internet or any of these network systems. But there are technologies being developed I'd have to say they're not completed there yet, but they're developed that you can breadcrumb people back to see where they are, what they're doing. It's still technology being developed, from my perspective.
So from finding that talent, if you were to go out and just kind of look around the internet, you'll find different kinds of events. Call them hackathons, is kind of how we talk about them. And these hackathons are attended by just a wide, varied group of folks. And in fact, we've been starting to do a little bit of recruiting at those events. So, you know, it's not necessarily the individual staying home and not being social. In fact, it's a very social community wanting to learn those skills. And so you're right, they're not traditionally coming from our universities. Some are, some aren't. But they actually do have a social community that you can kind of tap into.
They love challenges too. I mean, you know, we hold hacker challenges. We say, hey, we're really plenty smart people here, and we don't think you can break into our system. So we set up a grand challenge and offer a $10,000 prize. But interestingly, when we offer, say, iPad 2s as a prize, we get more people using cash. So you hold these social events, you challenge them, and the ones that win, you try to hire.
Right, exactly.
Yes.
Are the attacks coming from the barefoot guy in the back room, or are they coming from other countries where they're a coordinated effort that's actually taking place, say, in Bulgaria or China?
Well, we know about Estonia, right? We know about Georgia. There are theories, right? I don't know that we all know the answer. Opinion is that it's broad. It's coming from multiple places. Some are organized, some are not organized. And that makes the challenge that much more difficult, right? Because we tend to think about the organized attacker, right? That is our challenge, actually, is trying to anticipate what might be the attack. The other challenge in this area is as soon as you might notice that an attack is happening, you have to very, very quickly try to decide what's happening so you can protect yourself. I mean, and this is a zero-time kind of event that has to happen. And so I believe the issue is we have to protect against all, right? The individual that says, what if I, let me see if I can. That's kind of where we started. But now as war on cyber, we're finding that there are more and more malicious attacks for a directed purpose. I don't think we know.
There are directed attacks against certainly the defense industry. There's a number of notable ones here. Fairly recently with, I think, even Lockheed Martin was hacked, and Boozel and Hamilton, another one at RSA. And some of these they were able to get a considerable number of drawings and the like for considerable IP surrounding specific weapon systems and the like. So it is quite real, even in the industry itself. That we certainly get pestered from just nuisance type things, but to some what appear to be very deliberate and organized attacks to gather information.
Yeah, unequivocally, it's yes, both. Because it's sort of a classic terrorist look, where terrorists might not necessarily be country sponsored, but some of the attacks are more like the kids putting spray paint graffiti on the bridges. It's just they're out there just messing around. So your response has to be proportional to the attack, and the attack could be anything. It could be domestic, it could be barefoot folks, it could be a very coordinated, nationally sponsored event. So it makes the problem hard.
Yes.
So you mentioned your talent pool. It sounds to me that you didn't promote your talent pools from people who are not formally educated in these areas. Are we
Forgive me, I don't know if everybody in the back can hear that question. So
Yeah, I'll repeat the question.
Thank you.
It was asking with this, the fact that the various companies like Lockheed and Raytheon are attracting people from non-traditional backgrounds. They may not necessarily have college degrees, and they're trying to find a so-called barefoot person to be our anti-hacker. Is there any organized approach to try to attract and, if you will, create a pipeline, I guess, for these kinds of folks?
I guess I'll start. I'll hop on that. There's certainly a lot of formal education, formal programs in the colleges producing some very good talent. I don't want it to sound like that the only talent is the barefoot kid out there doing it. It's just that that's another source of talent that traditionally for an engineering and technology company, it's very unusual for us. So you have to tap all the sources. And we're getting some very highly qualified, advanced degreed people in network technology and cryptology and behavior and chaos theory. All this enters into as you're designing the networks and understanding how to protect it. So it's really it's not a focus on the blue-haired, mohawk, barefoot kid, but understanding that person might also have some very valuable talents, and we have to somehow find a way to pull all that in, not just the traditionally educated technologist.
The other aspect of that is retooling and providing skills for folks who are already in the workforce, right? Technology is changing very, very quickly, and many of our institutions are providing appropriate courseware where we can go back and train. And from a Raytheon perspective, we've been working with College for network certifications, the whole cybersecurity, trying to elevate folks who maybe have been in the workforce for 20 years and maybe that's not where they've been. And so the more programs that we have that we can not only create the pipeline, but also help those folks who are currently in the workforce today transition to the technology quickly, because that's what's happening. Technology is moving so quickly. It really takes a concerted effort by every technologist to stay on top.
Can you hear this? Good.
Security of the cyber nature often, since we're so interconnected, depends on the security of the very start point where somebody's starting in but might be on a computer that's been compromised. And so how do you see the government, there are externalities all over here, and so how do you see the government mobilizing to educate people broadly about the severity of these risks?
So cyber hygiene. Go Google cyber hygiene and you'll learn about it. And in fact, many companies, Lockheed, Raytheon, the U.S. government, are little sticks, right? Where you take and you take them from computer to computer to share your data, put them on another computer. That's where WikiLeaks started about a year ago. If you remember the Army soldier in Afghanistan, I think, right? He went in, he stole some data, he was in an environment that was not supposed to have any removable media. Okay? So while we can put up defenses and walls, it is really about actually each individual understanding those particular behaviors that they do that make the system vulnerable. Downloading attachments that you don't know where they came from, all of those things that you hear about. So I have not seen the government yet start with a campaign. However, if you look at the 5-point war on cyber strategy that they put out, one of them is about educating and creating the awareness within their community for all of the things that starts back at the individual. But if you are looking, you'll hear it. But I'm going to tell you, within Raytheon, you can also, and part of the tools of protecting in a cyber security or cyber secure environment is you can monitor what's happening. So there is software out there, and maybe some of you work in an environment where you are being monitored that knows if you put a removable media on your computer on the company network that maybe is not password protected or isn't of the right caliber, and it can flag it, right? And then you can decide, was that malicious or was that just, not being careful?
It really is an excellent question, because I'm not convinced that the government can do an adequate job in that area, because when you look at, I've seen numbers up to 20% of the computer users aren't really computer literate, and I'll probably, I'll take my mom as an example. She's got a computer, she hops on, does grocery shopping and stuff, and I go over to her house and say, Mom, what do you do? You don't have your McAfee, expired 3 years ago. What's going on? She said, what's McAfee? He said, and I'm she's just, son, calm down. But the point is that you do have millions of entry points of users that are using it as sort of a strictly a commodity item. And many of these users will probably ignore any government.
Exactly.
So I don't know if that's money well spent from that perspective, but the money well spent may be in this other, if you can then put an overarching gatekeeper to start helping with the computer hygiene issue. But it's this whole distributed aspect of it with, literally hundreds of millions of nodes, many of which aren't protected. It makes it a very difficult problem. My mom's actually pretty good, so.
Hi. As a chief of information, I wonder, don't you think we do a disservice to this incredible cybersecurity topic by doubling down our focus on prevention, when we know right now where the realization in the last 6 to 12 months has been that we're not keeping them out, and we're not going to, because of the investment and the level of attacks that have occurred, in particular in your industry, have unleashed a great number of tools to the cyber cartels that they can employ, plus which they have any number of zero-day attacks, meaning things for which there is no signature that Norton or McAfee could possibly employ, plus which the techniques by which they can effectively have extended remote RSS type attacks right now that are just indefensible by the very nature. I read a report by HP Gary yesterday that pointed out that the developers who develop the tools, they consider the tool's ability to crack Norton antivirus or McAfee to be a QA point in development. So, by the very definition of the tools that they can now employ, they will necessarily rip through any defense product that might be out there, any security preventative product that might be out there. And all of the old phishing attempts and clumsy methods of the past are just that, they're of the past. Any determined advanced persistent threat now can move pervasively into your network. And now we need to shift towards detection and response. And that's where we need to employ these people in monitoring activities, looking at the signatures, looking at the beacons, and the things that are actually happening, what otherwise is happening there in. And now we have to figure out how to deal with it.
So I agree. It has actually shifted to detection and tools to minimize any damage. The assumption is you will be attacked. The challenge here is to minimize any damage that's done from that attack. And so why we need the folks who are very innovative in their methodologies for attacking is so that we can maybe be ahead of what might be the targets or the attempted damage. Right? And so it isn't about prevention, and this is where the government is going now, is prevention is a part, you need to do that, but it is really about detection. And it's about, there are even techniques where you will allow someone to penetrate, right? And you watch, right? What are they trying to do? Because you want to know that. That's intelligence, so that you can defend against what they might be trying to do. So the techniques have definitely shifted already, and I believe that's really part of the premise of the government's war on cyber, because not all agencies are at the same maturity level in thinking about that. And as they try to share more data across agencies, the problem just gets worse.
Yeah, and I certainly agree with Lynn on that one, but I'd probably put another flavor on it, that prevention certainly is not a disservice, because you have to have this layered response to everything. And think of it as, kind of building a fence around your house. Some people put up a little picket fence because that'll keep out some people. Some people then say, oh, I'm going to put up this big chain link fence. And then some people say, I live in maybe Huntsville, and I'm going to put up this thing with, razor wire and all that sort of stuff. To do it appropriately, you have to still have the sort of simple prevention techniques to keep the graffiti people out of your system, certainly. But your point's exactly right. I think Lynn verbalized it very nicely. It's gotten much more sophisticated, that both from a defense viewpoint as well as an offense viewpoint.
Yeah, to follow up on that question, I've had some notes from the announcement that the Department of Defense put out, just to quote from that. I think it answers some of that question. The key thing they're doing is moving from defending cyber attacks to deterring them with retaliatory attacks, is the position of DoD. Laws of armed conflict apply in cyber form. So we're real bullets and bombs for cyber attacks. It's a very aggressive policy position. I said they established a U.S. cyber command, which is the equivalent of the top land commander, top Air Force commander, and so on. So it's its own domain now in the defense construct. But the four main tenets of the policy is there's more active defenses, support the Homeland Security Department on network security, collective defense with allies, so in a sense of broadening your network with others, and then reduce the advantages the attackers have on the internet. I'm just repeating what so yes, it's really a game change in the position, I think, which fits the tone of your question. And, I think things are going to more rapidly change in the future.
Another question about the sophistication network is getting more and more expensive every day. All right. So defending networks get more and more expensive every day, and now we're going to have budgets for an offense against attacks, but the target is invisible or hidden, showing how much is projected to be spent on offensive cyber warfare or whatever.
Did you get it?
I'm going to say, I don't know yet. I don't think we've seen how the government will budget offensive versus defensive. But there's a shift in the U.S. government today. You're all aware of our budget issues, which has caused uncertainty. The budgets are capped, and everyone, I think, we had a congressman visit one of our Pennsylvania sites, a member of Congress not on any of the armed services committees, and we were trying to explain to him that with budgets being capped, that puts pressure on our companies for employing people. And he said, why? You get the same amount of money. I said, well, no, not really, because programs end, and as part of our budget issue, programs can't start. And so in that world, with our customers today, because that world is continuing, they're not sure how much money they're going to get. They're not sure where they can place emphasis right now. So there's a lot of uncertainty. And so that ties back to, we have this strategy that has come out. However, we haven't quite figured out, the government hasn't quite figured out how to spend their money. Put on top of that, you've heard about Ash Carter's efficiency campaigns, right? That the U.S. government and all of our military has to become more efficient. Okay, so what does that mean, right? How are we going to do that? Well, a very simple transition that many of our customers are making in their IT world is a belief that the cloud, how many of you watch the commercials, right? The airport, we're going to the cloud, which is really just a distributed computer network, so you can share resources in a simplest form. But that's going to save them money, right? So we have a lot of different things happening right now, from budget constraints to trying to be more efficient, sharing data. If you're going to the cloud where you're sharing resources, then that would allow you more computing power, but now think about security, right? Now you're bouncing around using different resources. So from our perspective, it is very, very unclear right now. The customer is creating that vision, I believe. They're in the process. And our opportunity is to help them create that vision with how we think we can help them protect their environments.
And I think it might be getting a little easier now, because I think we're sort of starting to be able to educate our friends up in Washington on how they can't afford not to do it. You know, before, when it was just, I'm stealing some data, big deal, okay, get some drawings, big deal. But now that we have, for instance, we've got pilots in Nevada flying UAVs in Afghanistan, and you can couch the problem of what happens if this kid in Chile intercepts that data stream, takes over that predator, fires some of those Hellfire missiles at, who knows, India, so I think we can now start couching the problem very realistically, not blowing it out of proportion to say this has to happen because the nature of the industry has changed so dramatically over the past, certainly 5 years, and you can't afford not to do it. So, there's going to be waxes and wanings in how do you fund it, but luckily intellectual property can be less expensive than a very expensive hardware. So you try to do that balance of what has to happen.
And what will overlay on top of this is privacy of data, privacy of information. There was just a New York Times article yesterday, I don't know if any of you saw it, but it's about a small company in Santa Barbara who offers a service to employers that you give them a potential employee's name and they will go scrape, is the term, scrape the internet for the last 5 years for any information about that person and provide you a report. Think about that, They're doing it all within very open social media types of events. But if you can do that, what else can you do, right? In the network, as internet, as you start moving around. And so I see our customers also having those kinds of issues, especially when, we've been talking here mostly about outside attacks, right? Someone outside is trying to get into a company or the government. What about inside attacks? Right? How do you protect against someone who is inside your perimeter and decides to do something malicious? So there's a whole lot of issues around how can I watch them? Can I actually monitor everything that they're doing? Do I get to read their emails, right? It can become very pervasive when you're trying to decide to what level can you protect the environment, but because we live in the United States, right? We also have privacy rules. So it's a problem to be solved.
All right, sorry.
Not to take us off of cybersecurity, but, you know, one of the underlying challenges that I think here also, I'm going to be blatantly patronizing to Paul Klocek. If you don't know, he has really been a huge advocate in the STEM initiatives for the MTBC. And so when we hear the statistics that David said, or someone said, you know, Raytheon and Lockheed can absorb the entire population of our engineering graduation classes, I'm assuming it's a baccalaureate degree, I don't know if you go to the master's or doctorate. I mean, what initiative, what can we help do to drive the technical curriculums to a higher level of interest, popularity, whatever it takes, you know, to goose up, you know, the admissions and the interest in this area? Because at some point in time, to me, it sounds like with such a declining balance of engineering graduates and the escalation of the amount of challenges that are associated not only with just cybersecurity, but all of these areas of technology, you know, it sounds like the equation doesn't balance at all anymore in terms of our ability, you know, to supply the talent level to meet, you know, the most basic of challenges you have.
Well, there is lots of research out there that says we need to touch our children early, right? Elementary and middle school, and keep them engaged in math and science. I spend a lot of time working in that group also, and oftentimes it's about hands-on. It's about connecting the fact that the rocket going in the air, right, which is a very visible and a very exciting event, is really all about math and scientific principles. And making that connection early is important. So from a Raytheon perspective, we have been supporting many different national events like Math Counts, First Robotics, Best Robotics, National Rocketry, all attempting to stay engaged. And each one of our local sites have many other kinds of activities that they do. But you know, it's all about touching these children as far as I'm perspective. But you can't stop there, right? We have to take them through junior high, through high school. I work with a lot of female students. It becomes, they tend to fall off math and science. They don't want to carry through. So we have to give them some role models. We have to show them that engineering is a wonderful career, and there are many, many different things that you can do with it. In addition, you know, in Raytheon we tend to talk about engineers because we're, you know, just very engineering egotistic, right? But it's not just about engineering, right? It's math, it's science. And one of the messages that I always try to share with students in whatever grade is stay connected to math and science, because you don't know what that thing is going to be that comes. You know, Dean Sprung talked about biomedical. That wasn't around, you know, really not that long ago. And if you weren't engaged in math and science, you might not have been able to take advantage of that. And to, you know, not date myself, but I actually started college in civil engineering and found out that that's not really what I wanted to do. I'm going to tell you I went to sewer class, so if there's any civil engineers in here, I apologize. But I decided the sewers weren't it for me. Yeah, that's all right. But computer science was just coming to the university, and because I had that background, I could shift, right? So you have opportunities. It's a tough problem. We have to also watch here, this is now Lynn's personal opinion, in Texas, we are actually talking about reducing funding for technical education through the high school. It bridges into community colleges, but then also into the four-year university. So if we're cutting funds for technical education related to math and science and engineering, how do we keep that pool going? So we have mixed messages. But it takes personal commitment, I believe, by all of us.
Yeah, you got to capture them 6th grade to 12th grade. I mean, I'm an adjunct professor at some of the local universities, and I've just been appalled at the level of preparation some of the kids are getting in their secondary education. And you got to capture them there. And to capture them, the teachers really need your help, because the teachers are overwhelmed. Technology is changing so rapidly. You know, math and science is hard, and you've got to make it where it's worth the effort. And so I would challenge each of you to connect with a local elementary, junior, high school, or high school and volunteer to help, because the teachers need your help. The kids are they're yearning to learn, but if they don't get good role models or don't get people who are passionate about it, they're not going to do it. So I think our universities are doing a really good job at what they're doing, but they have to work with what they're given. And if we're trying to compress an engineering education something less than 7 years or something less than 5 years, that's very hard to do if you have to go and teach incoming students algebra, or basic science. So I would challenge each of you, and I think that's the only way it's going to work. Again, use the internet as an example, a distributed approach with lots of entry points. We've got to help our education system. Public funding is under a tremendous amount of pressure, and so I don't think we're missing much there. But each of you help students or help teachers, because that's where I think the biggest impact's going to happen.
I can give you just a real small example. In Raytheon, we have what we call employee resource groups, and in the McKinney area, the Women's Network partnered with McKinney ISD, and the Women's Network is the preponderance of women engineers, shockingly. But they actually partnered with the school district and created a curriculum integrated into the physics curriculum for juniors in high school. That they brought once a month a Raytheon group to every physics class. So they touched 1,800 students in McKinney ISD. They brought, I'll call it conceptual physics to a problem. They talked about leadership, they talked about communication, all of those other aspects of working in this community, just with a group of 10 to 15 women. And they were committed in the school district, and the teachers, not only were they coming into the classroom, the teachers were now learning about engineering and how physics and math might relate to that. So it was a wonderful program. So individuals and groups can come together without a lot of financial need to support our school districts, because they are under attack right now.
I'd like to follow up a couple of comments. Consider, well, it really is a complete mindset and a partnership, I believe, between the government, schools, the communities, industry, is the only way to really support a system that drives our kids in the directions that we really need. Look at what's happening in China. I don't know if any of you ever spend some time over in China. You'll go over there, you'll see a population that is ferociously eager to learn. No matter where you go, they'll tell you they want to be innovators, they want to get educated. They are producing way more engineers than we do here in the U.S. The number of patents today are less than half of them are issued to U.S. companies. Graduate school at the master's and PhD level, well less than half of the folks getting degrees are U.S. citizens. I mean, China is running away in many areas. China is not just patents, but papers that they're publishing in journals in certain areas are more than in the U.S. From U.S. authors. I mean, so there's been a considerable shift, and I think that's the way we used to feel, a few decades back. And to regenerate that, it has to go across, really all aspects of life. I mean, the government, with their, hopefully they'll keep emphasizing what has come out of the Gathering Storm reports through America Competes Act, which is to drive many, many more STEM teachers into our schools at all levels, as well as R&D. If we have to encourage folks. Examples are great when they meet any of you high-tech folks. That is extremely inspiring to kids. But we've got to have the resources, got to put the money behind it in the programs and the schools, and you have to show through investment that we're going to continue to invest in R&D so that they're attracted to some end result as they leave the university. So it takes a broad partnership to pull this together, and I think we're really not perhaps as bad off as we might think in the U.S. from a lot of the data, but I think we have to pay a lot more attention to this than we have, and we have a ways to go.
I'd like to throw a challenge out to everyone in the audience. If you don't have a summer intern program for high school or junior high kids, get one. Because there are a lot of really struggling kids that are interested in math and science and engineering and high technology that are going to be flipping burgers over the summer, or going to go work at the car wash over the summer. So I would challenge each of you to reach out and bring a student or two in and let them work with you over the summer. These are really, really sharp kids, and a little experience like that goes a long way in helping solve the problem. And it's easy. They're cheap. I like to get a bunch of them,
Any other questions or comments? Oh.
How do you all feel about the end of the space station era, and how do you think that will affect kind of the next generation, if you will, of students who are interested in STEM education? I mean, in the Cold War era, back when we were kind of in the space race, kids were excited about the possibility of one day they too could be an astronaut, or they too could go to the moon. How do you think that the new news about the space station the space shuttle will kind of affect that new generation of future astronauts and future STEM students?
I'm very biased and parochial because I've worked on the leading edge and the nose gap of the space shuttle. So every time it re-enter over the Metroplex, I drag the kids outside to the point that said, okay, Dad, stop doing that. But I think in that case, everything has to balance, dollars and effect. But if you don't have what I call obvious engineering, you're not going to attract a lot of the talent you need. And the space program was a tremendous example of obvious engineering, doing audacious things, that would inspire imagination and certainly fuel tens of thousands of small businesses to support. And I'm very disappointed because I don't want to have to call up Moscow and say, hey, I need to run up to the space station and do some work. But I think as with a lot of government, pseudo-government enterprises, there's a lot of efficiencies that should be applied to any large endeavor. But from a technology viewpoint, we need some of these obvious thrusts to really ignite the passions. It's my bias.
Yeah, I agree. I often joke when we talk about country songs, right? You don't hear about an engineer except Kenny Chesney has one song. You listen to it, it's engineering, right? The guy down the road is an engineer. But so engineering is not visible really in anything that we do. We talk about doctors, we talked about lawyers. There are shows on TV about all of those careers, but not necessarily engineering. And engineering. So until we have something that is very visible, as David said, and something that you could say, hey, I want to do that, and I want to be like that. It's kind of back to what Paul said. It's going to be hard because it's many of us pushing to something that is not extremely clear to those that we're trying to convince. So I think we have lost a model.
There's some great studies of the, these the moonshot type and the impact that the common purpose that drew. A lot of stories about the engineers and scientists that got the Apollo program, and the dedication was just absolutely extraordinary. And it was routine for folks back then to literally even sleep at work and just go on and on to make that happen. And I think, that you see that throughout the industry, certain companies, when they, you click on that common purpose and you get it, that vision and goal and challenge out in front of folks, it will pull things together. And so, I think, we need to show out what are those common challenges, and I think that, such as, it is, cybersecurity, things, you can rally around that common challenge and extraordinary things can happen. So it's disappointing anytime what used to be a big challenge, once you accomplish it, the next key challenge is finding the next challenge, and that's quite critical to continued innovation.
Yeah, we're somewhat hamstrung because, in general, when engineering works, nobody notices. When it doesn't work, that's when you get the attention.
And you don't want that attention.
And most of the time, we don't brag about the stuff we do. And we say, oh, we went to within physics, so we can do that sort of stuff. So, it's sort of a shame on us a little bit, but that's nature of the beast.
So I have one other follow-on question. It's kind of a personal opinion. I did grow up in the Cold. I don't think you guys did. I did grow up in the Cold War, and so I will tell you one of the things that I remember as a youngster, which is why I originally went into engineering, is that we had a competitor, and not that we want to, go back to the Cold War environment. But our competitor in my era as a